This is Mr. H, Chapter 1, Lesson 1, Integers and Graphing. Here we go. Alright, so make sure you have your pencil ready. Make sure you have some time ready so that you can really focus on this video while following your notes or taking notes. Alright, so let's get to it. What are integers? Integers are whole numbers and their opposites. But also make sure to include 0 in there. 0 is also an integer, even though 0 is nothing. 0 is not a positive or a negative, it's just 0. So right here I'm drawing a number line. I always put 0 in the middle, but that's not always necessary, okay? So keep that in mind. I just like putting 0 in the middle because it makes it easier for me. And then 1, 2, and 3, those are whole numbers. Remember that. Now I'm showing you that the opposite of a positive 1 would be a negative 1. The opposite of a positive 2 would be a negative 2. And the opposite of a positive 3 would be a negative 3. These are all integers. Integers are whole numbers like 1, 2, and 3, and their opposites also include 0. Negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, we can call those negative integers. 1, 2, and 3, you can call those positive integers. And 0 is also an integer. That's super important for you to remember, especially when we get to classifying rational numbers. So you can see number lines not just going left to right, but also going up and down, vertical. Left to right being horizontal, going up and down being vertical. So the positive numbers would go above 0 because they're more than 0, right? The negative numbers would go below 0 because they're less than 0. Also, just a quick note, 0, you can consider it sea level or ground level. Integers above ground level or sea level would be considered positive integers. Integers below sea level or ground level would be considered negative integers. So right now, what I want you to start thinking about is integer words. Words that might represent negative integers and words that might represent positive integers. So a negative word that can represent a negative integer is a word like loss, below, withdraw, and debt. So like what I mean by representing a negative integer is like a loss of 3 pounds. That would be a negative 3. Like below 40 feet below sea level, that would be like a negative 40. Does that make sense? Now, words that can represent positive integers, words like gain, above, deposit. So if I were to say I deposited $100 into my bank account, deposit lets you know that I'm talking about a positive 100. Deposit $100 in my bank account. That would be a positive 100. That's the integer that would represent. Word like decrease can represent a negative integer. For example, a decrease of 3 inches, right? That would mean decrease represents a negative integer. Decrease of 3 inches, you can represent that situation with a negative 3. And another word for positive could be income, because that's money that you're getting paid. So for examples, I'm going to give you a situation and you're going to think of an integer that can represent that situation, like the examples I was just talking about. So this example says an increase of 3 pounds. An increase of 3 pounds. What integer would you give that? Think about it. Think about increase. It would be positive, right? So if it's increasing 3 pounds, an increase of 3 pounds, it would be a positive 3. That would be your integer that you would use to represent that situation. So the next example is just locating integers. You have a -3, a 0, a -1, and a 2. The best way to do this is draw a number line. You can draw it going up and down or left to right. Best way to do is put 0 in the middle. You know which numbers go to the right of the 0, right? Those integers are whole numbers. Those are 1 and 2. And you know that the integers going to the left of the 0 would start at a -1, a -2, and a -3. And then you just locate them by putting dots where those numbers are. And that's it, guys. Nothing to it. Integers and graphing. We're done.